Welcome back, everyone, to Behind the Arc Basketball on YouTube. Finally, it looks like we're going to get back to basketball action here, which means I get to call games for you guys once again on the channel. So, it was announced today that the NBA's Board of Governors are expected to approve a plan for 22 teams to return back to action for the NBA at the Disney World of Sports Complex in Orlando, Florida. The NBA will have a conference call tomorrow on Thursday, June 4th at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time with the intention to approve the NBA's return back to basketball. According to ESPN, the NBA's Board of Governors will require a 3/4 passage of the 30 teams on this plan, but there's an expectation that team owners will overwhelmingly approve the commissioner's proposal. The rest of the NBA season is expected to take place starting on July 31st and is expected to conclude on October the 12th with Game 7, if necessary, of the NBA Finals. The NBA playoffs are expected to start around August, and the NBA Finals are expected to start around October. According to Shams Charania of The Athletic, the NBA Draft Lottery and the NBA Draft Combine is most likely moved back to August as well, which means that the NBA Draft will be moved also to around late summer. And ESPN also stated that the NBA draft and the NBA free agency period will begin around October. As for the 22 teams in the NBA that will get to play in Orlando, each of these 22 teams will play 8 regular season games to determine seeding for the playoffs if this plan is approved. After the 8-game regular season has finished, then there will be a play-in game to determine the number 8 seed for the playoffs, which will be between the number 9 seed and the number 8 seed from both the Eastern and Western conferences. So for a number 9 versus number 8 play-in game to happen, the 9th place team would have to be winning 4 games of the 8th place team in the standings. If a play-in game series does happen, it would basically be a best of 2 games where the number 9 seed would have to win 2 straight games against the number 8 seed in order to take the number 8 playoff spot away from that 8 seed and for the 9 seed to jump over the 8 seed to be the 8 in the playoffs. If the number 9 seed is more than 4 games back behind the 8 seed in the standings, the number 8 seed will automatically make the playoffs. The Eastern and Western Conference will still be doing their playoff seeding with the top 8 teams from their conference when the playoffs start around August. So the seeding would look like this: number 1 versus number 8, number 2 versus number 7, number 3 versus number 6, and number 4 versus number 5. 13 of the 22 teams heading to Orlando are from the Western Conference, while 9 of these teams are from the Eastern Conference. So here's the thing that gets interesting right here. There are 6 teams that have a chance to make the playoffs, which were outside the top 8 of the standings of their conference when the season ended back in March. So here's the 6 teams right here that still have a chance to make the playoffs. They include the Portland Trail Blazers, the number 9 team currently in the West, as they are 3.5 games behind the 8th place team in their conference. Also the same thing as the New Orleans Pelicans. They are 10th place currently in the Western Conference, also 3.5 games back of the 8th place team in the West. The Sacramento Kings, same thing, the 11th place team in the Western Conference, 3.5 games as well behind the 8th place team in their conference. The San Antonio Spurs, they are right now 12th in the Western Conference. They are 4 games behind the 8th place team in the West, and they have been invited as well, along with the Phoenix Suns, as they are the last one here from the West, the 13th place team, as they are 6 games behind 8th place in the Western Conference. The only team that was extra invited outside of the top 8 from the Eastern Conference happened to be the Washington Wizards, as they happen to be in 9th place currently in the Eastern Conference, as they are 5.5 games back from the 8th place team in their conference. So we're going to get here to the 8 teams that will not be playing in the 22-team NBA return back here. These 8 teams are at the bottom of the NBA standing. So here are the 8 teams: the Charlotte Hornets, who happen to be 7 games behind the Orlando Magic, who are in 8th place in the East. So the Charlotte Hornets would have basically, if they were allowed to be in here, they would have needed a miracle scenario by winning all 8 games, and for the Magic to lose only 2 of those games to get into this playoff scenario, but they weren't invited to Disney World, same as the Chicago Bulls, the New York Knicks, the Detroit Pistons, Atlanta Hawks, Minnesota Timberwolves, Cleveland Cavaliers, and the Golden State Warriors. Now we'll move on to another category here. We're going to move on to the teams that have technically clinched a playoff spot now in the Eastern Conference playoffs under this new scenario of the 8-team regular season game format before the playoffs. So there are 6 teams that have now, with this new scenario, technically clinched a playoff spot already. These teams would happen to be the Milwaukee Bucks, the Toronto Raptors, the Boston Celtics, Miami Heat, Indiana Pacers, and the Philadelphia 76ers. All 6 of these teams from the East are at least 9 games ahead or greater in the standings of the 8th place team currently in their conference. There also happens to be 7 teams from the Western Conference who have already clinched a playoff spot technically under this new 8-game regular season format before the playoffs start. These teams include the Los Angeles Lakers, Los Angeles Clippers, Denver Nuggets, Utah Jazz, Oklahoma City Thunder, Houston Rockets, and the Dallas Mavericks. All 7 of these teams are at least 7 games ahead or greater in the standings of the 8th place team currently in the Western Conference. Now this is where it gets interesting. The spots that are up for grabs for teams to make the playoffs where a team is not yet a playoff lock. That includes the number 7 and number 8 seeds in the Eastern Conference, which happen to be the Brooklyn Nets are currently the number 7 seed in the East, and they're right now 6 games ahead of the 9th place team, the Washington Wizards, in their conference. Also, the Orlando Magic are the 8th place team currently in the Eastern Conference, as they are right now 5.5 games ahead of the 9th place team, the Washington Wizards. And now this is the most interesting one. The number 8 seed for the playoffs in the Western Conference is gonna be a battle, as you got 6 teams involved for the 8 seed. Currently, the team in 8th place at the moment is the Memphis Grizzlies. They are 3.5 games ahead of the 9th place team, the Portland Trail Blazers. And also, in that pack, we have the teams that I talked about earlier here. The Pelicans right along with the Trail Blazers, as they are 3.5 games behind the 8th place Memphis Grizzlies in the Western Conference. The Sacramento Kings right there as well, 3.5 games behind Memphis for 8th place. San Antonio Spurs, 12th in the conference, still alive as well, as they are 4 games behind Memphis. Phoenix Suns, they are in it as well, 13th place team, as they are 6 games behind right now the Memphis Grizzlies at 8th place in the conference. So that's where it's just wide open. 6 teams from the Western Conference trying to battle it out for the final playoff spot as the 8th seed to get in for the Western Conference. This is going to get interesting here. Here's my take about this whole thing with a whole new bracket, whole new scenario here with this whole new regular season into the playoffs. I am so glad that the NBA is right back. I honestly thought that the regular season would be shorter though, like a couple games. I would have predicted there to be like only like a 4-game regular season to build like kind of like a warm-up, to build chemistry, shake off the cobwebs since these basketball players, a lot of them didn't really have access to a hoop at home, so able to play a couple of games before the playoff starts is really what they needed here. I didn't expect 8 games though. I thought half of that number at 4 games I expected here, but I like this scenario though, that they have a great opportunity to finally find that chemistry in these 8 games once again before the playoffs. Also, I like this battle with the 6 teams competing for the number 8 seed in the Western Conference. We're going to get to see some good quality basketball out of this, I feel like, since these teams are all competing now for playoff spots. So it's going to be so interesting. There's a lot at stake here to see just how the complexion of this game will change with no fans in the stands, which players will struggle without the fans, and which players here will just rise to the occasion with no motivation and be able to pull up and just pull it together and just come in here and lead on the court at Disney World, where just magic and magical dreams come true, as we will see here what happens. But having no fans, that element, that's just going to bring the game to just a different type of level that none of us has basically witnessed before. So it's going to be so interesting here, that is for sure. But super duper glad that we're finally getting sports back here, and the NBA is back here. And also, all the teams, even if you're a playoff lock there with the top 6 teams from the Eastern Conference, top 7 teams from the Western Conference that are playoff locks, they're still going to have to play for seeding, as nothing is basically given to them already. So you have to win games here to earn that seeding and to improve that seeding as well, as that is the big thing here. But hopefully there's going to be some good quality games. So excited though that the NBA is back, as hopefully we're going to have great news tomorrow, I hope, with the confirmation of the NBA approving their season to be back for 22 teams here for the 8-game regular season going straight into the playoffs. Thanks so much for watching this video here, everyone. Don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe to my channel, as this is Behind the Arc Basketball on YouTube.